Welcome back to Ty and That Guy. I'm Wes Chatham. This is my good buddy Ty Franck. What are we talking about today, Ty?
The very first Christopher McQuarrie directed movie, back before he was the guy who directs all of Tom Cruise's Mission Impossible movies and was a gazillionaire writer-director for the Hollywood elite. There was a little indie film writer and director named Chris McQuarrie. He wrote a little film called Usual Suspects, which became a surprise giant hit that year, and parlayed that into that, demanding that they let him write and direct a movie. And this is the movie that he wrote and directed when he finally had enough power to demand that off of the success of The Usual Suspects. And it is Way of the Gun, one of my favorite movies of that era. And I think a much overlooked gem from that period. I don't think it did well at the theater, so not a lot of people had seen it.
It's interesting. I didn't know Way of the Gun was as true of an independent film as it was. Miramax just distributed it, but they made it on their own. And Christopher McQuarrie and Bryan Singer went to high school together. And Christopher McQuarrie was like working at a theater. He was a security guard. And Bryan Singer called and said, "Look, they're going to let me make this film. Do you want to write it?" Now, this was not Usual Suspects. This was, I think it was called Public Access, or I think that's what it's called. Is that what it was called, Joseph?
Yes.
And by the way, I literally just finished the movie, literally like 10 minutes before we came in. So I haven't done like I haven't really done the research on this. This is just me being a Christopher McQuarrie fan. So I literally just finished the movie. So this is my first impression of the movie. I am a little bit perplexed by the movie because I love Christopher McQuarrie. I love The Usual Suspects. I love everything he's directed, even the commercial films, the Mission Impossibles, and I think he's a really talented writer and a talented storyteller. I love Benicio del Toro.
Oh, yeah.
He is one of my favorites. I think he is a modern day Steve McQueen. He's just so fucking cool. Like just when his screen presence and when he's on there, and he's a really gifted actor, and he doesn't have that need to be liked. That kind of frees him, that a lot of actors that ooze that in the screen. There's something just really interesting about everything he does. I love, dude, you got Jimmy Caan in this movie, and you got Jeffrey Lewis from Every Which Way But Loose, and the Clint Eastwood Westerns. He's one of my favorites. It was great seeing him, and then his daughter, Juliette Lewis, who's also one of my, particularly at this time, like when she was just killing it. Since Cape Fear all the way to then, so she's fantastic. So I'm all set up. I'm like, Jesus Christ, because I've never seen this movie before, and I'm like, all of these people that I love, written and directed by somebody that I'm a huge fan of, and then you have this opening, which is a punk rock fucking opening.
Yeah, with Sarah Silverman.
Yeah,
my absolute favorite Sarah Silverman scene ever, where she's just screaming at them.
She's just screaming. And then I was thrown for a loop when Felipe punches her in the face, and he doesn't punch the other, and he doesn't punch, you're like, oh shit. And then they, get stomped on by the crowd and kind of get their ass kicked by, it looked like a Hollywood crowd that, so then you're like, okay, these guys are kind of, you say, okay, I know what these guys are kind of like low level criminals, and they're kind of losers in a way because their skill level is in a way where these guys can get the jump on them and beat the fuck out of them. And then when the thing sets up, I'm like, oh shit, this is like a Sam Peckinpah vibe, modern day Western kind of feel. I am on board. I am into this all the way to the last 30 minutes of the film, which is this fantastic, crazy shootout that I
at the
love.
Brothel, the shootout at the brothel in Mexico. It's amazing.
The wedding, amazing. Taye Diggs' death was particularly like something that I really, really enjoyed. Getting shot in the throat, and it was just so authentic and real.
By the way, is Taye Diggs the prettiest man who has ever lived, or is he the prettiest man who's ever lived?
Dude, he's a handsome.
I think he might be the prettiest.
Yeah. I mean, I was watching this like, damn, he's a dime piece. That guy.
Yeah, he is.
We haven't done, because Taye Diggs has got a body on him too. We haven't put him on the top bodies list that when we do our top bodies.
What happens is, so I rewatch Way of the Gun every now and then because I just love that movie. And every time I watch it, I forget that he's in it, and then I go, "Oh yeah, Taye Diggs is in this. He's a good looking man." Like it reminds me every time. That's a good looking man right there.
So it has all of these parts and elements that I love, that I'm a big fan of. It is in my strike zone, and I remember some of my really good, great friends, including you, that love this movie and tell me all the time, "You got to watch Way of the Gun. You got to watch Way of the Gun." But whatever reason, with all these great parts and everything, when they're put together, the movie doesn't fully work for me. The sum of its parts did not live up to what the parts were when I first started watching it. And I haven't had time to really decompress, and I'm like, there's so many things that I really loved about it, and there's so many things that and you know what? It's also too, I can sense that Christopher McQuarrie, and I know he disappeared for a little bit, like 15 years from directing, and I know that he was so fed up with studio notes and bullshit notes, and that this movie was like a big fuck you to all. You could feel it. You could feel it. You know, does my characters need to be likable? Fuck you. Do we need to have this? Like, and I love that. I'm such a fan of that stuff. And if I look back now, just watching it 10 minutes ago, and I'm trying to figure out, I just feel like that it got a bit crowded in terms of the characters and then the twists within each character, and I didn't care. You know, I was on board in the beginning, and then it loses me in the middle. And I think that it was really hard for me to really understand each character's point of view and kind of and what it is that they wanted. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
No. I think the last couple of sessions of this we've done have made it very clear to me that you're just bad at liking movies. Because you also didn't like Young Frankenstein. So I think you're just bad at liking movies. I wouldn't put this as
I didn't like it. Like if this movie, if the last 30 minutes of this movie is on, I'm stopping everything to watch it. I was and we'll kind of, I just wanted to get my overall, and then we'll kind of go through each thing. There is so much about this movie that I liked. For whatever reason, it didn't work for me as a whole. And, you know, we'll probably figure that out as we talk this through. How did you first see this movie, and what was your first impression about it?
I'm pretty sure the first time I saw this movie, it was a rental.
Uh-huh.
And I don't remember when or why I rented it or what was going on. But my first impression is that I loved everything about it. Oh, you know what? You know why I watched it? I remember this because I was reading old movie reviews by Roger Ebert. And he had, this was like on the internet, right? Like the early internet. He had a thing where he was listing movies that he thought were undiscovered gems from each year. And it was it was like 10 movies each year that not enough people saw, but that Roger Ebert loved. And on one of those lists was Way of the Gun. And I had no memory of it. So I clicked on it to read his review. And his review really intrigued me. I was like, I remember that. I remember reading his review and being like, oh, that sounds really interesting. And I loved Chris McQuarrie. I loved, Usual Suspects is, of course, a classic for a reason. So I went out and rented it. And the thing that I remember Ebert pointing out was that he's like, this movie has, Roger Ebert goes, I am so tired of car chases. I never need to see another car chase. I've seen 10,000 movies in my life, and 9,900 of them had car chases in them. And they're all boring, and they all don't matter to the plot. And I'm so tired of car chases, right? He was saying that. And then he said, this is the first movie I've seen in years that had a car chase I was interested in. And he talks about the slow motion car chase. And I found found his description of it so intriguing that the first chance I had, I went and rented the movie. And he was right. I love everything about this movie. This is one of my most quoted movies. I quote this movie constantly. It's a Chris McQuarrie film. So Chris McQuarrie's gift is for dialogue, right? This really punchy, sort of snappy dialogue, which is sardonic and funny at the same time. But this was the one where he was like, okay, here's all the shit people think goes in a Hollywood movie, and I'm just going to do my version of it and tell them why their version is stupid. And that car chase is one of those moments.
Yeah.
The slow motion car chase down the alleys, where it's just like those guys are following us. Why would we drive fast? They're just going to drive fast too. Let's just drive slow, right?
Yeah.
And that slow motion car chase down the alleys is amazing.
Well, and then, which, of course, they ghost ride the car. So that opening sequence is fantastic. They overhear about the Juliette Lewis. Yep. She's having a baby for a really rich, dangerous guy. She's always under bodyguards, so they kind of come up with a plan to kidnap that. The kidnapping sequence was really interesting. I was trying to understand their skill level with the weapons because, you know, they kind of get in that sloppy fight in the beginning and they get, you know, and you're like, okay, I understand, like, you know, what level of criminal this is. But this, you know, when they go and when they're kidnapping the girl, they're really scrappy and clever. You know, the way they do it, they're like, they have that kind of scrappy cleverness. And then they're running and gunning, you know, they're covering while the other guy's moving and then they're covering. So you're like, oh, okay, they got a little bit of skill. And then when the other bodyguards swoop in on the other side, they kill all those motherfuckers. They kill, like, you know, when they pull out, it's just bodies all over the ground. And then when they're doing the car chase, they're resourceful, they're clever, they're scrappy, and there's something really interesting, and you kind of learn a little bit through that thing. But I've never seen anything like that where they ghost ride the car and then they hide off to the side and then they come and then they pop out. I thought that was really cool and really interesting.
Yeah, it's really well done. And so one of the things I think that maybe if you watch this movie a second time, you'll have a different appreciation of it, because I think one of the things that threw people about this movie is McQuarrie spends zero time explaining what's going on.
Right.
And he spends zero time explaining backstory, right? But he drops hints all through the movie about the backstories of all of these people, right? Just little hints about them. And based on that, just my take on it, having seen the movie multiple times and sort of thought through all the clues that get dropped, these guys are hitmen. Benicio del Toro at one point tells James Caan that he used to be a bagman, and the bagman is the hitman, right? The guy who shows up and kills everybody, and you know, like, he's the James Caan character, right? And he says, yeah, I used to do that. I used to be a bagman, right? So I think what happens, you got these two guys that were in that world, that were in that life, that were hitmen, and just got out, just decided they were done with that life, that it became clear to them that they were always just going to be low-level guys, right? They even in the beginning, when there's the voiceover, he talks about, it becomes clear that you can't wait for life to give you things. You gotta go get your own thing, right? And they decide that they're going to go find their opportunity. They're going to go find something that they can take, right? So their skill level made sense to me. That, like, they're kind of dummies, but when shit goes down and the guns come out and everybody starts shooting, they get very cool. They get very, like, immediately they kind of switch into this other mode.
Well, I think it all goes into the conversation he has with James Caan, which is a great scene when they go and have a drink at the bar. And he basically, and James Caan is like, who's the brains of the operation? And he's like, there really isn't brains of the operation.
We're not really a brains kind of operation.
But when he's talking to James Caan, what I feel like James Caan, they both are at the same place, because Benicio del Toro doesn't want to be with James Caan, who's now looking around and he's older, in his 70s, and he's still working for his, like, he hasn't had that big payoff. That's why James Caan, his daughter, is setting this whole thing up for him. Yeah. And Benicio del Toro.
Yeah, James Caan is the old version of what Benicio del Toro is.
And Benicio del Toro has basically seen that before James Caan and got out before him. And he's like, I'm here to get mine while I can. That's why James Caan is sympathetic to him, and he shoots him in the leg. He doesn't try to kill him. There's a certain kind of
he kills them both. He kills them both by shooting them in the legs. They're both going to die.
I thought that was like compassion when he shot him in the leg. Oh, he shot their arteries?
He's shooting them where they don't have vests.
Oh.
They're both wearing bulletproof vests.
Okay, that's
so
interesting.
He aims low to take out their legs. Because the voiceover is Ryan Philippe talking to God.
Well, yeah, I know but they've already been shot like 8 times, so I knew that they were on their way out. But that makes sense. What you're saying now makes sense, because they were talking to God. Yeah. But James Caan, like, there's a bit of camaraderie, you know, when he has there, and James Caan gives him the out. He's like, just take $1 million and you can go now.
And a lot of people, when they discuss this movie, discuss whether or not that was a legit offer. I think it was. I think James Caan was offering him an out.
I think so too.
I think it wasn't a setup. I think Del Toro reacts as if it's a setup, but I think James Caan legit was going to give him the $1 million and let him walk away.
And I think, as we discuss this, what I'm trying to articulate in the beginning is, you and other friends of mine, this is in their top. Like, this is in their top 5, top 10. Like, this is a really important movie to them. So when my mind was wrapped around that, when I watch it, there was so many things that I loved about it, but it didn't hit me the way that I thought it was going to. And so it as a whole, it didn't work in the way that I thought it was going to work, because as everything that I would love in a movie, all in the same movie. And particularly like James Caan, you know, it's almost like if Sonny Corleone never died, but then he you know, aged out. Like he was like this because he had that same charisma. And there's something about James Caan that is really fascinating. Like if you think about in The Godfather, Sonny Corleone, the fact that he took Tom Hagen, who was kind of homeless on the streets, and he had compassion for him and took him home and, you know, brought him to his father, and then they raised him as if he was a son in the house. And then the moment when he's mad at Tom Hagen is that if I had a wartime consigliere, we would be doing, you know, and then he's in there and then he's like, I didn't mean that. I didn't, you know. So there is a fierceness, there's a strength, there's a temper that he has, but he has this deep compassion. So when he's in the car with Jeffrey Lewis and Jeffrey is dying and he's an old pal, an old comrade, and he's sitting next to him, and the sympathy that he has for them is something that's just really fascinating about him, because he doesn't play, he has dimensions to who he is. You know, he loves his daughter. He loves that guy. He's not just this one note bad guy. He's way too interesting.
No, he's
that.
not. No, he's not. He's not a one note bad guy. And there's an argument that he's not even a bad guy. I mean, he's a bad guy in that he's in organized crime, but literally everyone in the movie is in organized crime. So it's not like there's a good guy. The sort of only unambiguously good person in the movie is the Juliette Lewis character, right?
Yeah.
Everybody's kind of a bad guy.
And that's what's interesting about the movie is like there's just a bunch of not great people, you know. It's
yes.
like and
no, they're all terrible people,
and they have some good qualities and some bad qualities. But there's nobody that's like that's the guy that you're rooting for, except what you say, Juliette Lewis. Which didn't,
yeah, she's
didn't
the
have
only
much
kind
to
of
do.
unambiguously good person,
right?
But the scene you're talking about, so I think you need to let this like sit for a while, and then like a couple of months from now rewatch it, and I think you're going to enjoy it a lot more. I think maybe what messed you up is the level of expectation, because I think all the people who love this movie are the ones who were surprised by it. Like we didn't know what to expect, and then we watched this movie and we're like, I didn't expect any of that, right? So it completely takes you by surprise. But the scene you're talking about, I think, is a perfect scene for why the people who really love this movie, and I mean the people with good taste, you know, who love the movie,
right?
People with intelligence and the ability to analyze film.
Thank you, Ty.
And big dicks.
Yeah, that love the movie. The people with gigantic cocks who love this movie. That scene is a perfect example, though, because the scene is set up that it's James Caan sitting in the car with his friend who's dying, who's been shot, right, and is dying. And you're talking about how he has all this sympathy for him and stuff. And at the same time, though, he can't wait to get out of that fucking car.
Yeah.
And Jeffrey Lewis keeps talking. Yeah. And he's just like, every time he starts to move to the door to get out, he starts talking again. And he can't leave because as long as his friend is still talking, he can't leave him, right? But he really wants to get out. And there's such a wonderful tension between his sympathy and his humanity and the fact that one of his old friends is dying next to him, and he's super impatient to get out of that fucking car and go do the thing he needs to do, right? And that tension in the scene is in every scene of this movie.
laughed out loud during that scene because Jeffrey Lewis is like, I'm dying, and he passes out, and then James Caan's out of the car, and then he's like, and he's like has to ease back in the car, and like he's close the door, and then he has to be alone.
And then at the end, he goes, you know, I think I'd really like to be alone right now.
Right.
Which gives James Caan permission to leave.
Yeah.
Right. Which is what he's wanted the whole time.
Yeah.
But it's that kind of tension between what people want and what's actually going on in the scene, and that this entire script is permeated with that stuff, with all these moments where the B-level script of this movie would only do one of those things.
Mm-hmm.
But Chris McQuarrie, I think, is one of the best screenwriters working right now in certain respects. And he writes an A-level script, and his A-level script is always doing the B-level thing plus this other thing.
He wrote that script in 5 days, which is pretty impressive.
Which is astonishing.
Because
it is one of the most quotable movies of all time.
Yeah.
So Daniel and I, we use that line, I don't think we're a brains kind of operation.
Yeah.
We use that all the time. When people ask us which of us is the brains, I think we're a brains kind of operation. I constantly use, I think a plan is just a list of things that don't happen. I use that all the time. I mean, we quote this movie constantly. It's one of the most quotable. So you got to remember this movie came out. So you had the actioners of the 80s, where it was Supermen running around, laying waste to hundreds of guys and bullets sliding off them like they're made out of Teflon, right? Then you had the 90s rejection of that with like Pulp Fiction, where the violence was brutal and sudden and nobody's an action star. And it's just like, if somebody pulls out a gun, you should be scared because people die when guns come out, right? There was that. And then Way of the Gun, and then a whole bunch of Pulp Fiction ripoffs came out. Remember, there was like this whole stretch where every movie was trying to be Pulp Fiction in the 90s. Way of the Gun is the post-Pulp Fiction movie, where it's like, we're going to have action, but it's going to be action that feels visceral and real. We're going to have that sort of sardonic take on crime that Pulp Fiction had, but it will feel visceral and real, and we'll keep the Pulp Fiction humor, but won't do all of the other bullshit that everybody was ripping off from Pulp Fiction.
There's a strong Sam Peckinpah harsh realism to the violence that's in it. And that's when it's at its strongest.
He definitely was deliberately aping Peckinpah.
Right. Sure. There's some wild bunch in there. You know, the last 30 minutes, like when the Butch Cassidy and Sundance moment, when they're like, I know that money's a trap, but fuck it, we're gonna go after it, and they just go out like in a blaze, you know, and they go after that money. It's like, and then there's 2 times I laughed out loud. The first time when he's trying to leave the car and his buddy's dying, and the second time is when Ryan Felipe dives in the fountain and it's like all glass.
You hear him scream.
He's like, oh shit! And he rolls over and there's just glass on his hands and stuff like that. Like he jumps in like expecting to be water in there, and it's just fucking glass and shit in the bottom,
or even just dirt.
Oh yeah,
like just
dirt.
Expected it to be
something
empty
in there. Something he was not expecting glass in there, and they go through some shit at the end. You know, they go through some shit at the end. But let's talk about the beginning and the end are like my favorite parts of it. But let's talk a little bit of the second act, and maybe you can help me understand some of the stuff that's going on, because I felt like I understood what everybody wanted, what everybody's motivation. I just didn't care as much as I did at the end of the beginning. So, for instance. So I guess Taye Diggs is fucking his wife. Yeah. So
they definitely imply that.
Yeah. So he's fucking his wife. That whole shrimp scene where she's eating the shrimp and they're like, I don't know. In certain things, like, so in the beginning when Sarah Silverman comes out and she's screaming and doing all this stuff, and he goes, hey, tell that cunt to shut the fuck up before I suck start her mouth, you know, and shit like that. And you're like, okay.
Before I fuck start her head.
Before I fuck start her head. And you see that and you're like, okay, this is a punch in the face. This is like, this is punk rock. This is telling the studio to go fuck yourself. We're going to do this in a way, and this is what it is. And it's like a punk song. And you watching that and you're like, I am on board. I get it. When Ryan Felipe is having the interview for the being a donor,
by the way, them interviewing to be sperm donors is one of my favorite sequences in the entire film.
Okay, see, this is where we part ways, because I don't fully understand. Like, you know, I don't understand. I don't understand like why what all the F stuff.
Oh, when he's talking about gay people in California.
Yeah. So when he's like, "Are you with this? Is this or whatever?" You know, he's speaking in a way and talking in a way that then I don't see reflected who he is, like, as it goes further. It was gratuitous, and if it's going to be gratuitous, like I want, like it's usually for a point, for a reason, and I didn't catch the reason.
It is for a point,
right?
No, it is. Okay, So what is happening in this scene? There's two things happening. So you have our 2 characters being interviewed for being potential sperm donors, and while they're being interviewed to be sperm, and the only reason they're being sperm donors is so they can get $1,000 to keep gas in their car, right? Because these guys have no money. While they're being interviewed, that's where they overhear the whole conversation about Juliette Lewis and how she's being paid $1 million to be a surrogate mother for this rich couple, and they come up with the idea of kidnapping her for a ransom. But while they're there, they're being interviewed. And what Chris McQuarrie is doing in this sequence, he's doing 2 things here. I mean, it's the same thing, but it's 2 different ways. What you have here is Benicio del Toro is being asked a bunch of questions that he's clearly lying about. Because he's lying in his answer. He says, says, "I've never killed a man."
Yeah.
And they're like, "Well, I didn't ask you that."
Well, see, that's interesting. That, that.
But the
Benicio
he's
stuff is
clearly
interesting.
lying about that. He's clearly lying about that. So later,
He's like, why would you just come out and say you never killed somebody? What does that have to do with any,
Well, and he's clearly lying because he has killed people, because you find out later he's a bagman.
Right.
But then he's like, never had sex with a dead body. I didn't ask you that, right? And then makes you wonder, has he had sex with a dead body? Because he lied about that other shit, right? Okay, so that's the humor of the scene.
Yeah.
The other half of the scene, and sets up that these are guys who are running from their past, right? Benicio del Toro is running from his past. The other half of that scene gives you the reason why they're running from their past. Because what Ryan Philippe's little thing about California and gay people, LA being the gay mecca or whatever it is, what he's objecting to there is people asking questions to try to get a certain answer without asking the question that would just get them that answer. Because what he recognizes in the guy is trying to ask, "Are you gay?" without asking, "Are you gay?" Right? He's beating around the bush. He's asking questions that will try to get at that information, but he doesn't want to ask, "Are you gay?" Right? And Ryan Philippe is calling him out for that, going, "Just ask. Stop fucking beating around the bush. Just say the thing you mean to say." And so what we get here is we get two sides of the same story, because these guys are on the run together. They clearly knew each other before they went on the run. They're clearly good friends. And when we see them in action later, they clearly have worked together before, right? They act like guys who have worked together before. Like you said, they cover each other. They instinctively know what the other guy is doing. So these guys have clearly spent a lot of time together. And what we get here is we get guys who are on the run from a violent past, which is the Benicio del Toro side. And we get guys who are sick of the bullshit. They are sick of everybody beating around the fucking bush. Nobody's saying what they mean. Nobody asking for what they want. And they're done with that. And they have moved on to, we're always going to ask for what we want. We're always going to take what we want. We're tired of fucking beating around the bush. And that scene is playing that story out for the two of them. But again, as I said, Chris McQuarrie wrote this one, and I think this is part of the reason why the movie didn't do as well as when it came out in the theaters, is it's not an easy movie to understand. Chris McQuarrie never tells you anything. He just gives you all these little tidbits about the world and about the characters and expects you to put that puzzle together yourself. I think when some time goes by and you have some time to reflect, I think part of the issue here is you haven't really had time to think about it. I think when you've had some time to reflect, and if you decide to ever watch the movie again, a lot of that stuff is going to make a lot more sense. I think it's a movie that throws a lot at you very quickly.
Yeah.
Like never holds your hand.
Yeah, but I think I think watching this before the thing and not being able to process it, there were some things like that interview, which makes sense what you're saying. And I think that's interesting, but he was turning it on the interviewer, and the interviewer was clearly insulted by what he was saying. And I couldn't tell if he was insulted because he might be gay and him using the word that was like offending him. And then him kind of twisting the knife of that word with that guy. So as I'm watching this scene, I was like, what is this telling me about him? And is this going to come up again in that way? But I guess I understand what you're saying, but in the moment, it just felt a bit gratuitous. And obviously he was doing something to the guy that was interviewing him.
Well, and I think the other thing that scene accomplishes, and it is gratuitous and it is over the top. And I would understand why a person would be offended by it. I'm not arguing that people can't be offended by that stuff. I totally get why they would be. But the other thing that it's doing is it's the scene where the movie tacks away from the expectation of who Ryan Philippe is. Because Ryan Philippe, at that point in his career, he's very pretty. Mm-hmm. He's a very pretty actor. Yeah. And he had not played tough guys. He'd always played sort of the pretty guy that the girls fall in love with.
What do you think about him in this role?
I love him in this movie. I think he's great. But that scene takes that idea of what Ryan Philippe is, with your expectation of what he is, and throws it in the trash can and sets it on fire, right? It's like, in this movie, he's not that guy. He's not the pretty boy that the girl's going to fall in love with. He's a piece of shit, because they're both pieces of shit. And you need some scenes where they get to be pieces of shit. So you go, oh yeah, they're not the heroes of the story. They're not like, the entire plan for the movie is they're going to kidnap a pregnant woman and hold her for ransom from the people who paid for her baby.
So ultimately, when they go to kidnap her, and then the guys don't put the guns away, and they say to them, "Wait a minute, aren't you supposed to protect her? Now you're pulling out guns." And one guy actually put a gun on her belly, and then they're like, "Well, fuck it, let's get out of here." Are they leaving because they're not going to be able to pull it off, or are they leaving because they don't want to hurt her?
They're leaving because they're not going to be able to pull it off.
Okay. See, that makes more sense, because it's like, you kind of have these guys that you prove to me are lowlifes, and then they're going to rob, but then they want to do the right thing. But then later, if this is about, well, we're not going to be able to do this without getting shot, so let's get the fuck out of here. That's different than you're going to get her shot, None
of what they do in that scene is about her.
Mm-hmm.
It's about protecting her.
Yeah.
It is about, we thought we saw a payday. The guys that are protecting her are more professional and scarier and deadlier than we expected. We expected some former mall cops, right?
Yeah.
And instead we get these fucking hitmen.
And they're not intimidated.
And the thing is, they don't know who the guy who paid for the baby is. They don't know.
Yeah.
Right? So they don't know that they have accidentally targeted this woman who's carrying a baby for a fucking mob boss, right? They don't know that. So when these two,
I do love the detail about all the people in the room just sitting there staring, and he's like,
"Yep,
there fucking guns here. Like, get out of here!" And then they all fucking leave.
Yep. And the thing that the movie consistently does, and Ryan Philippe puts a button on it when he says, "I think a plan is just a list of things that don't happen." Every time these guys make a plan, it doesn't work.
Right.
But every time they're forced to improvise, they're very good at improvising. And that's over and over and over again what happens in this movie. So the scene is actually, if you watch what happens in it, they capture the girl. Taye Diggs and his partner show up and are like, "No, you're not leaving with the girl. We'll shoot her rather than let you take her," right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, "Oh, fuck, we fucked up. This isn't going to work." And they leave. And you hear Taye Diggs on the radio going, "Let them go, let them go, let them go. Don't try to stop them." Because he knows if they get out, they're just going to leave. And it's over. He understands that about them. He understands, we stopped them from taking the girl. They're just going to try to get the fuck at her. Let them go. Somebody outside makes the mistake of trying to stop them, starts a gunfight outside.
Wait a minute. So they would have shot Juliette Lewis before they would let her get away, before they would let them take her?
Yeah.
What would be the repercussions from the boss? Because that would be killing his kid. What he thinks is his kid.
Yeah. I don't know. But their thing is, she even says they don't care about dying. They just care about losing.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. They're just like, "You're not walking out of here with that girl. Whatever happens that we have to do to stop that from happening, we're going to do that.
Right.
And we'll deal with the consequences later. But you're not walking out of here with that girl."
Right.
Right. And what happens is the guys outside start a gunfight, which he's on the radio telling them not to. He's going, let them go. Don't try to stop them. Right. Because he understands the situation. Taye Diggs is a very smart guy in this movie. He understands what just happened. He knows that if he just lets them go, it's over with. And that's all he wants, right? Somebody outside makes a mistake, tries to stop. We don't see what the mistake is, but we hear the repercussions of it. We hear that sudden burst of gunfire outside, right? And Juliette Lewis, if she just goes up to the doctor's office and sits and waits for him, the movie's over.
Mm-hmm.
But she decides to make a run for it, right?
Mm-hmm.
She's making a run for it, and she just runs into one of them trying to make a run for it, and they just grab her, right? So that was never the plan. Nothing of what happens in that clinic is the plan, right? It's just a bunch of stuff that happens, and they wind up grabbing her then, right? So one of the things I like about the movie is that consistently these guys, every time they make a plan, it doesn't work. They're not smart guys. They're not like criminal geniuses. They're good improvisers.
They're not John Wick.
In the moment, they're not John Wick.
Yeah.
They're guys who are like, in the moment, they're like trying to kidnap this girl. It goes wrong. They wind up in this huge gunfight. And then as they're moving through the building to get away, she just steps off of the elevator. They're like, "Oh, there she is. Yeah. Let's just grab her." Right?
Yeah, it's there. That, and the design in that I really liked. I like that the only good thing about them is their friendship and loyalty to each other. And the fact that they're just winging it.
Maybe because there's the scene, Benicio del Toro shoves Ryan Philippe up against the wall, and the camera pulls back to reveal that he instantly had a gun pressed to Benicio del Toro's
But
neck.
he shoves him
instant.
But no, but Benicio basically sees Ryan kind of getting soft on Juliette Lewis and believing that maybe, maybe we can let her go. Maybe we can do something right. And then he's like, okay, well, go inside, because he sees Juliette Lewis walk across the room, and he knows that he's being mistaken.
He knows she's got
so
the
it's
gun.
teaching him a lesson because he does save Ryan, grab him, throw him up against the wall.
I know. I know that I know the lesson he's teaching him, and I know why he did what he did to shove him up against the wall. What I'm saying is, the instant reaction from Ryan Philippe is to shove a gun up against Benicio del Toro's neck.
Right.
Like we don't. He draws that gun so fast and puts it up against his neck so fast we don't even see it happen.
Right.
Right. So what I'm saying is, yeah, they're kind of friends and they're kind of compatriots, but Benicio del Toro lays his hands on Ryan Philippe, and Ryan Philippe doesn't wait to get an explanation for why he did that. He's already pulled his gun and shoved it up against his neck.
There is a reflex there.
And what I'm saying is, if you and I were hanging out and you suddenly grabbed me and shoved me up against the wall, I'd be pissed, but I'd want to find out why. My question
you wouldn't have a gun up
he
didn't shoot. He just took the gun out.
He didn't.
He didn't shoot. He
didn't
just
pull
like,
the trigger. But I'm just saying,
what's going on? He didn't shoot. And
even if I had a gun, I wouldn't immediately shove it up against your neck.
Let's talk a little bit about the motivations between the father. So the father's really legitimately happy about this baby because he's not able to have a baby going in there and wants this to happen. He doesn't want the cops involved. He doesn't want many people. He wants to handle it inside. Taye Diggs is fucking his wife. And so, but does she sees the, because obviously in the beginning she doesn't like Juliette Lewis, but does she see the sonogram and now kind of get caught up in wanting the baby? And does that change her? And then what is her thing with Taye Diggs?
Well, they're sort of implying that I think it's not that the old man can't have a kid. He had a kid. The doctor is his kid.
Yeah, but he's like 90 years old.
No, but I know. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, they're not doing this because he can't have a kid. They're doing this because she didn't want to carry a kid.
Oh, okay.
I think he went to her and said, we should have a baby. And she's like, I'm not carrying a baby. It's going to fuck up this. Like, have you seen this bod?
Right.
I don't want to fuck this up with a pregnancy, right? Uh-huh. So that's why Juliette Lewis is carrying the kid for them, is because the wife didn't want to fuck up her body with a pregnancy. And what's happening there is she's seeing the sonogram. She's thinking about the kid. And the other thing that this whole scene is, she has absolutely no love for the old man, right? Obviously, she's fucking Taye Diggs. She doesn't want to carry his baby. And what that scene is saying is she's going, I'm thinking if I actually like the guy I'm with, I might reconsider this.
Yeah.
I might be the kind of person who could do this if I was doing it with somebody actually like.
She doesn't necessarily don't want to carry a kid. She doesn't want to carry that old man's kid.
Right.
And so what she's saying is to Taye is like, hey, I saw the sonogram, whatever. Maybe I'll let you knock me up, which he ends up doing.
Yep.
And then Taye and his partner were like, hey, why don't we kill all these motherfuckers, get the baby, and then
creative articulation.
Yeah, and take the money,
Yeah.
And
I like how the partner keeps saying it, creative articulation.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we'll take the money. Who knows what happened to it? Creative articulation, baby.
And then Jimmy Caan, they send Jimmy Caan because explain to me what is Jeffrey Lewis and Jimmy Caan's roles and how are they different?
So James Caan is the old man's enforcer. He's the guy who has been running security for the old guy,
man,
probably for decades, right? They go way back. And he's an old hitman, right? He's the bag man. He's an aging dude who's been working for the mob for his whole life and ends up with nothing, right? Like he gets to the end of his life and he realizes he's got nothing. And what triggers the whole movie is Juliette Lewis agreeing to do this so that she can set something up for her father, right?
Yeah.
So that he doesn't wind up like the old man in the car.
Yeah. And I really admire how they didn't spell any of that out, but the way
they don't spell any of it out.
He looks at her and the way he grabs her hand, you immediately know this is the daughter. It was properly set up. It was all the way done. Yep. And that goes to a really great screenwriter. And also somebody that's like, fuck you to all the studio notes, because they would have had him explain that overly and through the whole thing, but it was way more powerful and way more emotional when it was so subtle and so far off like that, and you had to understand it. I would even argue that Ryan Felipe saying at the end when he rolled over and he's all bleeding and he's like, you know it's family just by looking at them. I didn't think it needed that. And I didn't think that would necessarily be where he would be at that moment and say that at that moment. But all that being said is I really appreciated how that was set up and how that was paid off. And it was really beautiful. Now, what is Jeffrey Lewis's role in this?
He's just one of James Caan's guys.
Yeah, because he had, it's almost like he's like the male Golden Girl of assassins, right? Because they have like all of his boys show up in like old men clothes.
Yeah, all of his old guys.
All of his old guys.
No, Jeffrey Lewis is, so if Taye Diggs is the future James Caan in that organization, Jeffrey Lewis is, what's the guy's name who is Taye Diggs' partner? I forget what his name is.
I know. Anyway. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Jeffrey Lewis is that guy.
But what I find, one thing that's really brilliant is Jeffrey Lewis is sitting with all the guns on the table and he loads up one gun and he puts them all in the bag and shakes it up, and you see the result that James Caan and Jeffrey Lewis of a life, this type of life, and where they are at the end of the life, and they realize they don't have anything and they're lonely and they're destitute and they're kind of on their own, where he's about to shoot himself in that.
Well, he's about to play Russian roulette 6 times, which statistically speaking, one of those times will work.
And he puts his hand up and he goes to shoot himself, and then he goes and then he calls and he's like, yeah, I'm not doing anything. So then when he's dying at the end, he's getting what he really wanted, and that's why I found maybe I am liking it more the more I talk about it, but that's why I really like the scene by Benicio del Toro and James Caan, because one of the best scenes in the movie. That's a fantastic scene. There's a camaraderie, and it parallels life too, right? You have a veteran actor talking to a really hotshot up and coming actor at that time, and somebody that was a member of the golden age of Hollywood, and somebody that's up and coming, and their camaraderie and their telling of stories. But it's also Benicio del Toro has seen the end. He's seen himself as Jimmy Caan at the end of his life. And he's saying, we're getting off that train. We're going to make a step to try to have a different life. Like we're going to try. And that's at the end when he says, we have no apologies for what we were doing. The system was set up and we're like, we refuse. It's like Don Corleone in the Godfather. He's like, I refuse to be a fool. I refuse to be a puppet on their strings. Right. So it's like, this is the life you have set up for me. I refuse to do that. And Jimmy Caan appreciates him seeing that, because he is where he is, and so is Jeffrey Lewis.
Yeah, and that is layered all through this movie. That you're seeing the guys who didn't get off the train, who stayed on it, and they've gotten to the end of their lives. They're realizing they're getting to the end and they have nothing. I mean, Jeffrey Lewis is sitting in that terrible little apartment. It's
a trailer.
Thinking, it's
a trailer.
Right.
Yeah, like Kill Bill.
And he's just sitting there thinking, I got nothing left, so I'm just going to shoot myself.
Right.
I'm going to play Russian roulette with these guns, right? He's loading all these revolvers with one bullet and sticking them in the pillowcase.
How creative. I've never seen Russian roulette like that before. But what I love too.
Well, yeah, you're trying to make sure it works, I guess.
But you know how we love how action is an extension of the character. And what I love is all the old timers that show up and they're gun battling the young guys. And they're almost bored with it. Like if you see when they go to take cover, like they're just loading their guns, the bullets are exploding around. Like it's like they've done it for so long. They're tired. They're fucking bored with it.
Right.
They don't even really care if they lose. And then the younger guys are like, they're up against the wall and they're fucking coming over and they're blasting their way out. And they have all this energy, and the other guys are just like fucking over it. Like Jimmy Caan at the end. When he's like just dipping his gun out and the bullets, and they're shooting all around him and everything. And so there's
and the way in which they approach the gunfight is so different. Like James Caan isn't dodging and rolling and doing all that stuff. He's just trying to find a position where he can't be shot and where he has time to load his guns and all that stuff. And then when the gunfire quiets down, he pops out and he takes a few shots, and then he gets back into cover again. Right. So it's the old man version of a gunfight where he's like, I ain't running around, I ain't dodging and rolling.
Jimmy Caan ain't jumping in no water fountain,
He ain't jumping in no fountain.
He's just sitting back loading his gun.
Like, I'm just gonna take my time and eventually I'll get my shot.
Right.
And he does. He just waits until he gets his shot, and then he takes his shot.
That's interesting. I thought that he was shooting their legs because I thought he had a bit of a connection with them, or a thing of an empathy.
No, they'd been shooting them in the body for a while. It just wasn't working because they were wearing really heavy.
And
body
also,
armor.
I guess if he, because he shoots him like 3 times, so I guess if he did have empathy, he'd just put one in their leg to put him on the ground. But he was lighting them legs up. There was a lot of crotch shots too. That one old timer took a shotgun right in the dick.
Yeah, that's a rough way to go. No, so Janae and I play this game.
Ooh,
it's an older game.
Yeah, y'all spank
it's
each other?
in a series called Ghost Recon. I don't know if you've ever heard of Ghost Recon, but so Janae and I played a ton of this game called Ghost Recon Wildlands, where you're trying to stop this drug cartel in South America. And she and I play together, and then a third friend of ours always plays with us. So we got a little 3-man squad doing this game. But when you're sniping dudes, there's guys who wear body armor.
Uh-huh.
And what I have taken to is when I snipe dudes, I always aim for the dick because there's no body armor down there, right? So there's a whole lot of people in South America that
don't have
wake
dicks.
up and are surprised to have discovered that they just got shot in the dick with a sniper rifle.
I do appreciate too one of the bodyguards when they tie him up with barbed wire with a come along and they're fucking ratcheting down, like the old kind of torture thing,
that's
whatever.
Horrifying.
Yeah, it's horrifying. There are all those elements of like, oh, these guys can be ruthless. Like these guys are not, they can be.
They're not nice people.
Now explain to me, was Felipe like having an awakening? Like what was the story about the pedophile that he went to kill, and that maybe, and then because Benicio says, what difference does it make if we killed and maimed all these people and then we let one child live? So what is that conversation really about? And is Ryan Felipe like having a spiritual awakening? Or what is that? Because he says, at the end of life about believing in God or talking about that whole thing. And then because that's at the point where he's like,
I don't know that he's having any big dramatic awakening where he's suddenly deciding to be a good person. I think what he is pondering is the value of a single good act. Right?
Well, no. So let me just finish my question.
Yeah.
Because what I think is one of the most interesting things about the movie and what he is subverting and tell me if you agree with this, but I thought that Ryan Felipe was having the moment where a typical character would be having his arc moment where he's saying, wait a minute, maybe we can do the right thing. Maybe we can be a good person in this situation.
Right.
I feel like Benicio del Toro is like, all right, let's go back inside and do it. And she's the one that reminds him that what human nature is like and what human beings are like, and that she's fooled him and just fucking surviving like everybody else is surviving. And so then he's like, all right, maybe you're right. Fuck them all, And so it was kind of like, you're kind of, timing that character arc of like, oh, this is when he has an epiphany. And this is when, that he's going to come. But then Juliette Lewis almost takes his head off and he has the gun of Benicio del Toro. And he's like, see?
No, and I think that's a perfectly valid version of that moment. Yeah, I think what you're saying there, I think, is a perfectly valid interpretation. I think in my head, having seen it a number of times, is that Benicio del Toro recognizes that there is a soft spot in. I think they've been partners long enough that he recognizes there's a soft spot in Ryan Felipe. I think, like you said earlier, he knows that she's got the gun. He saw her walking around. He knows she's got the shotgun, and he knows all I got to do is let him. He's like, yeah, go ahead, let her go. It's fine. Go ahead and let her go, because he knows what's about to happen, and he knows that's going to shake Ryan Felipe out of that moment of softness. He knows that, so he's letting it happen because he knows what the result is going to be. But yes, what I like about what you just said is the way that it subverts that expectation, because you're right. The normal screenplay would be like, oh, they discover they actually like her and they're worried about the baby, and so they become the good guys. No, they don't.
I almost think that it's a direct comment on Benicio del Toro was in another kidnapping movie with Alicia Silverstone, and it was one of those traditional Hollywood movies where he kidnaps her, and then over time they develop a relationship, and then he starts to care, and it kind of changes him throughout the movie. Right. And so I think it's almost like a direct commentary on a movie that he's already done, Because Benicio, like, why would he do another kidnapping movie unless he was going to subvert that? That's the kind of artist that he is. And I think he might have regretted that movie anyway. And I know that him and McQuarrie are friends. And part of the reason they did this movie is because they were at a frustrating time in their careers where Benicio and them had early success. And then they were struggling trying to make movies. And Benicio was like, look, because McQuarrie didn't want to do another crime movie that was similar to, but he's like, that's the only movie they're going to let you make. So let's go fucking make this movie and let's make it like, let's say fuck you while we're making the movie, which makes the movie a lot cooler the more I talk about it.
And the entire movie is a commentary on genre expectation. The whole movie is, because at every point, and you're bringing up some really good moments where it does that, at every point it says, here's what you think this kind of movie is going to do. Here's what because you've seen a million of this kind of movie. Here's what you think is going to happen. Here's how we're not doing that. But the tightrope that McQuarrie walks, because it's easy to subvert expectation, right? It's super easy. It's easy to set up a situation where everybody expects one thing to happen and to do something different. That's not clever. What's clever is when you do that and you do it where the person seeing it is satisfied with the answer you gave them, right? Where I'm watching a movie, I'm expecting this to happen, and that doesn't happen, but I'm satisfied with what they did. I go, that was smart. That was really interesting. That was clever. That was not what I expected, but it's still good. Because the thing with subverting expectation is anyone can do it. Doing it where it's still satisfying to the viewer is much, much harder.
Yeah. That's how I feel about a twist. If you do a twist with just the sole intention of just having a twist and subverting expectations, that's one thing. But if you have a twist in a script that then when you see it, it makes more sense that the twist happened than if it didn't happen, and then you can't unsee it. You know, and then that's when a twist really has been skillfully set up and done.
Robin Veith, who we've had on the show before, who was a writer on The Expanse, the phrase she used, which I have stolen and I use it all the time now, is surprising inevitability. You want something when this audience sees it happen, they go, of course that happened. That's the only thing that could happen. It was inevitable that happened. And that is the best kind of twist, where exactly what you're describing. Like you watch, you go, of course. Yeah, of course that happened. How could anything else have happened? But when you watched it, you were blown away. You were totally surprised by it. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And if you can find those moments in your stories, those are the gold. That's the gold in a story.
Yeah. And then at the end, which I think is a really great touch, is when what's the guy's name? He was in Walking Dead. The guy that's Chaddock, the guy that plays Chaddock. He's a really been around for a while, character actor.
Oh, the actor.
Scott Wilson. So when in his cold bitch of a wife, when she walks in there and goes, I'm pregnant. And then it ends right there. It's like, because now you know, after all that shit or whatever, and you know, hey, buddy, that's not your kid that was in there.
Yep.
You know, and
that kid's going to come out a little browner than he expected.
It is a cold-blooded way to end it. You know what I'm saying?
Well, and the only people who get away clean are Juliette Lewis and the doctor. They're the only ones who get away clean.
It's interesting because everything I want in a movie, this movie has. You know, the certain kind of edge and punk rockness to it. It has. You know, there's a certain element that it hit that I would love for him to get another shot at this movie, like to make this movie today. Would he know today?
I disagree. I think there is a magic that happened in this time and place, and I don't think it's replicable. I think I would like him to make more movies like this, though. One of the great sadnesses of modern cinema is that Chris McQuarrie has become Tom Cruise's guy.
But even those movies are good. But even like his Mission Impossibles
I'm tired of them.
I know, but his Mission Impossibles are the best Mission Impossibles. Everything that he does is the best version of that.
I don't disagree. I don't disagree with that. I think he's fantastic, but I'm tired of them. Like we didn't even make it 20 minutes into the new Mission Impossible.
How did he get hooked up? Was it Valkyrie? I guess it would be, huh? How did he get hooked up with Tom Cruise?
I don't know where exactly they got hooked up.
It would have to be Valkyrie.
I know that Tom Cruise asked him to work on the Reacher movie. And I think he did such a good job with that first Reacher movie that Tom Cruise is like, okay, you write, you now are my writer. You write everything I'm in.
Yeah, because Tom Cruise is no dummy. He sees that a talent that he has in Christopher McQuarrie. And I think Christopher McQuarrie, I think there was a bit of like go fuck yourself to Hollywood for a little while.
Yeah.
And I think, maybe now he's not as like, because he's kind of like, you know what, fuck it, I want to make a little money. I'm going to work with Tom, make some movies, and it'll be the best version of that. There's nothing that he hasn't been a part of that I haven't liked. Oh, okay. What's our top 5, Joseph?
We have Best Benicio del Toro.
Oh, all right. Well, he's done a lot of stuff.
And he's good in everything he does. That's the great thing
he's
about
fantastic.
him.
I love him.
I do have a question for you guys, though. What was the first thing that you recognized or remembered him in? Because for me, it was License to Kill.
Oh, License to Kill. Yeah. License to Kill.
License to Kill. He was the villain, and he was
He was a young hitman in License to Kill. He was great in that.
And he just, he ate it up. And it like when I saw him later, I was like, oh, it's that one guy.
Look, if anybody's listening, like you go back and you watch The Usual Suspects, and you realize that role does not carry any dramatic weight. That role is just there to show you how dangerous Kaiser Soze is. He's just there to die, right? Yep. But he is so inventive and makes such interesting choices. He steals every fucking scene that he's in, and he becomes fascinating, and he pops from that movie, whereas 99% of any other actor would have just done the job and not have been interesting in the role.
Well, the mythology, and I don't know if it's true or not. I've heard it a number of times from a number of different people, but I don't know how true it is. But the mythology is that he read the script, he went to McQuarrie, and he said, I don't have a single line of dialogue in this movie that actually matters to the plot. Nothing I say actually matters. And came up with the idea of making his character incomprehensible. Like giving him such a thick accent that you mostly don't understand anything he's saying, because nothing he says matters. Nothing he says actually affects the plot. And if that's true, if any of that is true, that makes me so happy. I hope it's true.
I don't know if that's true or not, but I believe that that's true. That makes perfect sense, because I don't think it doesn't make sense to write the guy that talks the way he talks within the thing.
Right.
Like they had a certain function that this character needs to serve. And then I think Benicio probably did the work and realized, listen, let me try something with this. And then Bryan Singer was probably like, run with it. Go try with it and see what it is. And then that stole the show. And that's the thing.
Stole the show.
I think that's true. I don't know if it's true, but it feels true.
Yeah. I want it to be true.
Yeah. And that makes me a bigger fan of his.
And of course, the other one is Sicario. Sicario has to go up at the top of this list. Sicario is amazing.
I think Ty and I both agree that Sicario is number 1 in this.
Yeah. There's no way that it isn't. I'm a huge fan of Snatch. I know not everybody loves Snatch, but I love Snatch.
I love
and Way of the Gun is in my top 5 for sure.
Wasn't Snatch a favorite? A fan favorite? I thought that made money.
Did it? Because I know I love it, and all the people that I watch movies with love it, but I thought it was kind of after Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, Snatch was considered a bit of a letdown.
Really? I thought that was a big hit.
True.
Ty, it was a budget of $10 million and it made 83.6. So I think it did well.
It made money. But what I'm saying is after the gigantic, unexpected success of Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels, Snatch was not the follow-up that people expected. And there are a lot of people who didn't like it, but I love it.
I love it. I love Snatch. Well, I love Benicio del Toro in Snatch. I love it.
Benicio del Toro is great.
I love Brad Pitt in Snatch. I think it's one of his best roles.
It's my favorite Brad Pitt.
Yeah, it's my favorite. It was my favorite boxer until Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Yeah, and then now that's my favorite. You know, I like Traffic. Is Traffic on there?
Traffic is on there.
I like Traffic. I think he was fantastic in Traffic.
I think he's great in Traffic. I don't love Traffic the movie, but I like him in it. I think he's really good in it. Inherent Vice was weird and interesting, but I've only watched it once and I've never felt any urge to watch it a second time.
Dude, I think we got. I don't think anything beats our top 5.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I didn't love Fear and Loathing in Vegas. I liked what they were trying to do. I just didn't think it worked.
Yeah. He was great in it,
I
though.
love Sin City, but Benicio del Toro's got a pretty small part in it.
Small role. I mean, he has a lot of great small roles.
He does.
Like, he's at the beginning of Swimming with Sharks, but like nothing else.
You know, he's interesting to me because if Benicio del Toro's in a movie, he's enough for me to go see the movie. But he's not like Leonardo DiCaprio. You know, he's not like, he doesn't get movies made. Maybe there was a time where he got a shot at getting movies made, but that's not where he is right now.
Oh wait, they're 2 for 2.
2 for 2 so far.
Oh wait, is that 3 for 3?
Oh my God.
They went Sin City.
The patrons, come on. Oh, and then Fear and Loathing.
They always get 60%.
3 out of 5.
They always get 3 out of 5.
Yeah. They know us 60%. The other percentage is a mystery to them.
Yeah.
It's that one patron also who's always
it's that one guy.
We're 40% mystery to them.
That's all you need. You only need to be 40%.
We want to be mysterious. We don't.
Yeah, you know what we're like? We're like the side boob of podcasters.
Yeah.
Like, there's an amazing boob happening there, but you're not seeing the whole thing.
The side
like, you
boob.
see the side and you go, oh, there's something happening over there.
You are titillated and you think something's interesting there, but you haven't seen the nipple.
We're the nipples of podcasting. You don't get any nipple.
No. They haven't. They don't get the nipple. They don't get the nipple. They get the cleavage, but they don't get the nipple. Maybe one day we'll get the nipple. Hey, should we do like a live show and invite that guy so we could just fuck him up and the whole podcast would be just us stomping his fucking head in the ground?
Yeah, we should do that.
Yeah.
You know what would be even funnier, though? The comedy cut is we do that. It turns out that dude's a badass, and he fucks the two of us up. And it's just 40 minutes of us getting our ass kicked by that dude. And he's just making fun of us the whole time. Remember when you were talking shit about me?
Yeah.
Remember when we were talking shit? And we're trying to crawl away, and he's dragging us back in.
It'll be like
Sarah
Silverman when she's like, he's going to fuck your ass. He'll fuck you right in the ass. Like,
Yeah.
Do you like baby?
She's got a big mouth, but she's not wrong. I'm going to whip you stupid and fuck you rotten.
You want a man dance? You want a man dance? You go first.
He's not even gay, but he'll do it for me.
And as the guy's whooping her ass, we're like, Joseph, cut this out. Cut it all out. While he's fucking tying the ass on the way down. Cut it out, Joseph. Cut it out. We love you guys. Please like and subscribe and ring that bell. Every time a bell rings, Ty gets his horns. Say goodbye, Ty.
Goodbye, Ty.